UFC Fight Night, Song versus Gutierrez is this weekend. I'm going to give you a prediction and breakdown of all 12 fights on the card, starting with Rayanne dos Santos versus Talita Alencar. I'm going to go with Rayanne dos Santos. I believe Talita Alencar was on the Contender Series. That was a draw in her last fight against Stephanie Luciano. She's actually pretty impressive. She's a very impressive grappling jiu-jitsu, multi-jiu-jitsu champion. Very impressive accolades there, but Rayanne dos Santos, I think she has a lot of experience in MMA. Talita Alencar didn't look that impressive, especially on the ground. Like, she couldn't get the finish against someone in Stephanie Luciano, who isn't that bad of a fighter, but it was a draw. But the cardio of Talita Alencar is not the best, and I think Rayanne dos Santos, who is definitely getting better, she lost to Denise Gomes on the Contender Series, and we've seen how well she's been able to handle herself in the UFC, beat a pretty good prospect in her last fight. So I'm going to go with Rayanne dos Santos. Her hands have been looking pretty fast. She's actually, I got that from her last fight against Jillian De Corsi, but she has actually been looking pretty fast on the feet. Her hands are definitely looking a lot better. She doesn't get herself into trouble too much on the ground. And Talita Alencar, it's women's MMA at the end of the day, so she definitely could get her down to the ground and sub her. I just don't think that's going to happen here. She's 4-0, doesn't have too much MMA experience, 33 years of age as well, 58.5 inches of reach. Rayanne dos Santos, 62 inches of reach, 14-6, so 20-fight professional record in MMA. I think that holds up quite a bit. Again, women's MMA, so it is a coin flip at the end of the day, but I'm going to go Rayanne dos Santos. I think she'll look a little bit more impressive in this fight. Maybe she'll get the finish because of the cardio from Talita Alencar not holding up towards the end of this fight, but I could see this one going to decision. I'm going to go 29-28 decision for Rayanne dos Santos. If not, I can see her getting the finish, but it is pretty much a 50-50 fight. I think Tapology is relatively correct about that. I can see any woman winning here, but I'm going to go Rayanne dos Santos. Up the card, we have Tatsuro Taira versus Carlos Hernandez. I am going to go with Tatsuro Taira in this fight. I know he had a very tough matchup in his last fight against Edgar Chairez. He actually made it really tough for Tatsuro Taira. Hurt him quite a bit on the feet, but he was able to control him on the ground. Actually had some decent submissions towards the end of the rounds, but it was at the end of the round, so obviously it gets stopped. They go back to the corners, and you have to restart on the feet. But he was having a little bit of success on the ground. However, it's just unfortunate timing at that point, and he was getting beat up quite a bit on the feet. And that was the one thing I said about Tatsuro Taira in my prospect tier list, is that he needs to be not necessarily better. Like, it's not a skill issue on the feet, because he does have some like decent punches, kicks. Like, his kicks are pretty solid on the feet. He doesn't set them up much. He kind of just throws them. But he's just not good defensively on the feet, which I think is going to be a problem. He's only 23 years of age, almost 24, so that can definitely improve quite a bit here. I want to see what he has improved since his last fight. That was, 4 months ago? Again, still very young, so he definitely can improve these things. But I want to see him be a little bit more defensive on the feet and not be so open for these shots. And Carlos Hernandez is actually a very good test here. It's actually a little bit more of an advanced test than in Edgar Chairez. I believe Edgar Chairez did take that fight on short notice, so at the end of the day, that's what it was for Tatsuro Taira. But I think Tatsuro Taira, even though Carlos Hernandez does have some decent takedown defense, like he's able to get, like he'll get taken down, you can get up pretty easily. Like the fight against Allan Nascimento. Allan Nascimento's a really big flyweight, and he's able to just like tie him down to the ground. Like, he just grabbed his back and put the hooks in and everything like that, and was able to submit him. I think Tatsuro Taira, he's not going to be as strong as Allan Nascimento, because Allan Nascimento is a really big flyweight. However, I think he's going to be able to put a pace on Carlos Hernandez, do a little bit of the stuff on the feet. Maybe he doesn't like a punch or whatever, goes in for a takedown. Hernandez will definitely be getting up, but I think he'll just be doing a lot. I think on the ground, Tatsuro Taira is a lot more trickier than Allan Nascimento. I know Allan Nascimento trains at Chu Box and all that with Charles Oliveira, and they're very good on the ground. However, Tatsuro Taira in his fights that he does win by a submission, like just looking at some of these fights, he beat Carlos Candelaria by a unanimous decision, but CJ Vergara, the way he got that submission was kind of crazy. Jesus Aguilar, that was a really nice submission as well. Just the way he's able to transition into those submissions are pretty unique. So maybe this one does go to a decision as he gets into higher competition. However, his submission game is really good, and I think maybe in the second or third round, if Carlos Hernandez starts to tire out a little bit more with the pace that Tatsuro Taira is going to be putting on him, I think Tatsuro Taira can definitely get the submission in the second or third round. That's what I'm going to be looking at in this matchup. Tapology has a 96% picked for Taira in this 172% by submission. I think that's probably about correct. I can see it going to decision, but I think this is going to be a late round submission, probably second or third round for Tatsuro Taira. Hopefully he has gotten a little bit better on the feet, because again, that fight was pretty tough. Some people could say it could have gone either way. I thought you could probably give it to Taira. I think he did enough in it, but again, the damage that was done to him, hopefully that allowed him to rethink, regroup, and hopefully up his skills a little bit more on the feet. So I'm going Tatsuro Taira by submission in the later rounds, late second or third round submission. With the card, we have Daniel Marcos versus Carlos Vera. I am going to go with Daniel Marcos in this fight. It's weird because it feels like there's a lot of Ultimate Fighter contestants coming on to the some of these UFC cards. I know that's what they normally do. However, it seems like you're landing Quinones, who didn't really do much on the show. I guess he had an interesting conversation with Roosevelt Roberts, but he's on there. Roosevelt Roberts was on one of these cards. I know a lot of people were behind him. I thought he was actually going to win. But now they got Carlos Vera. I know he's on a 4-fight win streak before going on to the show and losing to, who was it? I know it was Brad Katona, right? He lost to Brad Katona, which isn't necessarily a bad loss to have. However, 36 years old, 69.5 inches of reach. Daniel Marcos, pretty good on the feet. He won a split decision against Davey Grant recently, which actually is a pretty good one to have. Beat Simon Oliveira by KO. Beat Brandon Lewis by decision. Daniel Marcos is very, very technical on the feet, and I think that'll definitely help him in this fight. Carlos Vera, too old at this point. I don't think he'll be too much for Daniel Marcos. I'm going to be completely honest. Daniel Marcos is a pretty solid fighter, especially against some of those unranked guys. So I'm going to go with Daniel Marcos in this fight by finish. I'm going to say KO. What did Carlos Vera lose to Brad Katona by? Did he lose by finish? No, he lost by decision. Maybe he can tough it out there, but I think Marcos can get the finish. I think he's pretty tricky. Maybe he lands a knee on him or something like that to the head if Carlos Vera tries to shoot for anything. But I'm going to go with Daniel Marcos by finish and probably like the second round. 95% picked for Tapology, 66% by decision, 26% by KO. Up the card, we have Stephanie Egger versus Luana Santos. I am going to go with Luana Santos, and I watched her last fight against Juliana Miller, and I could not stop laughing at it because it was just so bad. Juliana Miller was actually outboxing Luana Santos on the feet, and her hands are just not good. Like, I don't know what it is with Juliana Miller, but it's very low level fighting. Luana Santos has some good power in her hands. I guess she just landed more often on Juliana Miller. Like, Juliana Miller was decently technical at the beginning, then she just started swinging because that was what Luana Santos was doing, and it wasn't like good. Luana Santos I'm talking about right now, it wasn't great technique. Like, she throws like hands, like she throws, I don't even know what to call it. Like, she doesn't turn her hands, so she's like throwing with her wrists and her arms. And Stephanie Egger isn't good on the feet, so she doesn't have to worry about Stephanie Egger on the feet in this one. She's more one track. I'm gonna take you to the ground and something like stuff like that. But Luana Santos is gonna beat her on the feet here. I don't know if Stephanie Egger can get Luana Santos to the ground. Juliana Miller tried to do it, but she just outmuscled her. I know Stephanie Egger's a little bit bigger, but I don't think she's gonna be better on the feet than Luana Santos. I think she has enough power. It was kind of just a slugfest at the beginning where Juliana Miller was just trying to go after her and land some crazy shots. So I'm going to go with Luana Santos. She's only 23, so hopefully she will get a little bit better. I won't go too hard on her, but she's 23, so hopefully that means she's going to get a little bit better in this matchup. It is up a division. I think that's kind of important. This is 126. I didn't know. I guess it was at flyweight against Juliana Miller. So this one's going to be a bantamweight. We'll see how she looks against a bigger opponent in Stephanie Egger. Maybe Stephanie Egger goes out in there and submits her, but I'm going to go with Luana Santos by decision. I think she just outstrikes Stephanie Egger on the feet. I don't think she gets submitted in this one. So I'm going to go Santos by decision. Up the card, we have Steve Garcia versus Melquizael Costa. I'm going to go with Costa in this one. I think this fight was scheduled for last week. I'm not too sure. I think it was. But I'm going to go Costa. Looked pretty decent against Thiago Moises, who I think is a pretty solid fighter, probably just right outside the rankings at lightweight. I know he was ranked at some point when he fought Islam Makhachev, if I can speak. But he looked pretty strong in that fight, did pretty well early on against Thiago Moises when he started trying to grapple him. But in his fight against Austin Lingo, he wasn't able to get the finish, which is kind of worrying. I guess he's good on the feet, but he can't get the finish. I think he landed quite a bit of good body shots on Austin Lingo in that fight too. I'm surprised he didn't finish him, but Steve Garcia isn't the best of fighters. Like, he beat Shalayan Nordembeke, which I think that's a really good win. However, he was getting beat pretty badly before getting the finish there. beat Chase Hooper by KO, which is actually a pretty solid win to have, but that's about a year ago, and Chase Hooper is actually looking a lot better now, so I guess it aged better. However, I don't think that's that great of a win. I don't know. I just think at this point in their careers, like he lost to Mahashate, lost to Luis Pena. I think he's going to lose to a guy like Melquizael Costa. I might be super wrong here. 27 years of age for Costa in this matchup, 73 inches of reach. I think he's going to be making the improvements. I don't know at this point in Steve Garcia's career if he's going to be making that many improvements. Like, he's 31. He's entering his physical prime. However, I just don't think the performance-wise against some of these fighters, I don't think it's going to hang with what Costa's been doing. So we'll see how it looks in the cages there. I'm going to go with Costa by... I can't say Costa by finish because he couldn't finish Austin Lingo. Austin Lingo is kind of tough. I think he got finished by Nate Landwehr, right? But Costa couldn't get the finish there. Maybe Costa mixes in some of the takedowns here. Maybe just pushes him up against the fence, trying to get Steve Garcia to think a little bit about some of the ground game. But because Costa isn't a crazy guy on the ground, however, I think if he just mixes it and makes it a little bit tough for Steve Garcia on the feet, I think get it done. Stay at range a little bit more, land some of those body kicks that he was landing on Austin Lingo. Might not be a bad idea. So I'm going to go with Costa by decision. I don't think he gets the finish on Steve Garcia again. If he can't get on Austin Lingo, I don't think he can on Steve Garcia. So let's move on. Up the card, we have Hyun Sung Park versus Shannon Ross. I'm going to go with Shannon. No, I'm not going to go with Shannon Ross. I'm going to go with Hyun Sung Park. Oh boy, can you imagine if I pick Shannon Ross? Shannon Ross, I have no idea why he's in the UFC. I'm going to be completely honest. He was on the Contender Series, got beat up very badly against Vinicius Salvador, and still got into the UFC. Like, they were actually propping this dude up on the Contender Series, like, because I think what was it? He trained out of CKB a little bit. Like, he's with those guys. I know it says Potential Unlimited Mixed Martial Arts, but he's around those guys. I believe Adesanya and all these guys were propping him up a little bit. They did a little promo package like they normally do on the Contender Series, where they had guys like advocating for some of them. But Shannon Ross, he was getting a lot of promotional support by the UFC before the fight, and then he got knocked down quite a bit and lost by KO against Salvador. Lost to Clayton Rodriguez by KO, and then got absolutely flatlined by Jesus Aguilar, and he's still in the UFC. Like, he got in on a loss, continued to lose against Clayton Rodriguez and Jesus Aguilar, and is now getting Hyun Sung Park, who I think they probably want to elevate a little bit more. He's from South Korea. They want to elevate one of those fighters from the road to UFC, and he won his last fight by submission against Seung-Guk Choi. I think he gets the finish here, probably by KO against Shannon Ross. Why Shannon Ross is still in the UFC is beyond me. But 97%, who's the 3%? Who's the 3%? I want to know. But I'm going Hyun Sung Park by KO, first round. I don't think Shannon Ross is that impressive at this point. I mean, he was initially, but it just seems like the KOs are kind of just counting up at this point. 34 years of age as well. I'm going Hyun Sung Park. Up the card, we have Kenan Song versus Kevin Jousset. I'm going to go with Kevin Jousset. Now, if Kevin Jousset did not have a ground game, I know he trains out of City Kickboxing, but if he did not have a ground game, I'd be a little bit worried for him in this fight. He is very good on the feet, very technical. However, he's super hittable. And I said that before his last fight against Kiefer Crosby. I'm sorry, I almost messed that one up. But I said that before Kiefer Crosby. He's getting hit quite a bit on the feet. Like, again, he's super technical. He trains out of City Kickboxing with the Adesanyans and all that. They support him. They've been propping him up quite a bit. They prop up those guys a lot. Like, they propped up Blood Diamond. Is he still in the UFC? I have no idea. Shannon Ross still is. So, but again, Kevin Jousset, if he wasn't good on the ground, probably would have lost a decision against Kiefer Crosby in his last fight, but he was able to get him down. I think what was it in the first or second round? I want to say, yeah, it was a first round submission. He was able to get him down in the first round and submit him almost immediately, hopped on his back very quickly. So that says quite a bit. Kenan Song has a lot of power in his hands. Like, at last fight, he won against Rolando Bedoya, and he's actually a pretty good prospect himself. Bedoya, I thought, was very impressive. I think it was against Chaos Williams, I will say. Looked pretty impressive there. That fight was actually really fun as well. Probably could have gone either way from what I remember of that fight with Rolando Bedoya and Kenan Song, but he caught Ian Gary. I don't know how good of a chin Ian Gary has because he does have a very small head, but I'm going to go with Kevin Jousset. I think he's just going to be better on the ground. If this does stay on the feet, I am going to be a little bit worried because Kenan Song does have some really good power in his hands, and I think if Kevin Jousset doesn't get this one to the ground, it is going to be very dangerous for him. He does have a really good chin, but again, just the power of Kenan Song can definitely be a problem for Kevin Jousset because he just doesn't move his head at all. Like if he did a little bit and did kind of what Ian Gary did after he got knocked down, maybe I would say Kevin Jousset just stay on the feet, outclass him, outwork him. I don't think that'll happen here. Kenan Song coming off a very good win. Probably wants to say this, keeps this one on the feet. I think Kevin Jousset wins this one by submission on the ground. And if he doesn't win by submission, I think he probably wins by decision, just completely out wrestling Kenan Song by like a 29-28, maybe a 30-27 decision. But I do think he will get the submission here. People are saying Kevin Jousset by KO. I think honestly it's going to be by submission or decision. In my opinion, I don't know if he's going to be able to catch and put away Kenan Song. Kenan Song is 33 years of age and did have a rougher fight against Rolando Bedoya damage-wise. Same thing with Ian Gary. However, and Max Griffin, I guess that's 3 fights where he took quite a bit of damage. However, I just don't think Kevin Jousset's going to KO him. So I'll say, after looking at Tapology, there's only 7% saying decision or a submission here. I'll say late round submission in like the 3rd round. Maybe he can get Kenan Song working a little bit. You know what? Yeah, I think he gets the submission. He trains out of City Kickboxing. They're going to be looking for that finish. I don't see him taking him to a decision. And yeah, I'm going to go rear naked choke finish. Early third round submission for Kevin Jousset. I think he feels the power in the first, goes for the takedowns in the second, and then continues it in the 3rd round with a gas Kenan Song and gets a submission by rear naked choke. So let's move on. Up the card, we have André Muniz versus Yong Park. I'm going to go with Yong Park in this matchup. André Muniz just got KO'd by Paul Craig, which is not great to see. I know Paul Craig has looked decent, and he did move down to middleweight, but I mean, that getting KO'd by Paul Craig is one thing. Submitted is a different thing. I'm going to have to go Yong Park. He's very strong, very powerful. I think he's going to be able to catch André Muniz and definitely maybe even KO him here. I think Tapology is saying it quite a bit as well. I think maybe he can't take this one to a decision, but the fact he did get KO'd by Paul Craig does kind of worry me here. I think Yong Park is strong enough to maybe even lay on him in his guard and not just do too much like crazy stuff to where you can get caught in a submission, or he can kind of keep this one on the feet and use his power and land really good strikes on André Muniz. André Muniz actually outstruck Paul Craig a little bit on the feet. Well, he's able to actually outstrike Brendan Allen a little bit on the feet before getting submitted, which was really weird. But he did do really decent on the feet, looked a lot better on the ground until he just wasn't eventually in that fight. And I think Yong Park can be able to catch André Muniz in this fight and eventually finish him in the 2nd or 3rd round. André Muniz he's pretty hyped up a little bit when just going through some of these guys. I think it was Jacare when he got that submission over Jacare. People were super impressed. However, he just hasn't been able to do much off of it. Went to beat Eric Anders by armbar, but then went to a decision against Uriah Hall, if I can speak, goddammit. But then got submitted by Brendan Allen, then beat up by Paul Craig. So I'm going to go Yong Park. I think he can get this one done. Super strong. He can definitely lay in his guard if he needs to win this one by decision or just completely outstrike him on the feet. So I'm going to go with Yong Park by finish, TKO, 2nd or 3rd round. I'm going to say 2nd round TKO. I think he eventually catches them and finishes them up on the ground. So 78% picked by Tapology, 49% by TKO KO. Let's move on. Up the card, we have Nasrat Haqparast versus Jamie Mullarkey. I am going to go with Nasrat Haqparast. I don't know how much I can put stock in Jamie Mullarkey at this point. I feel like whenever I'm high on Jamie Mullarkey, he just disappoints me in a different way. It's just really weird. Like, he beat Michael Johnson, which I thought Michael Johnson could have gotten the nod in that fight. I thought he did pretty decent. It just depends on who you thought had the better knockdown, I guess. Beat Francisco Prado by decision, but then lost to Muhammad Naimov on short notice. Muhammad Naimov came in on short notice and KO'd him, and then beat John McDessie in his last fight. So it just feels like when he starts getting going, he loses to a guy, Jalen Turner he lost to, which isn't a bad loss to have at all, but losing to Muhammad Naimov by KO, you just can't trust Jamie Mullarkey. And I think Nasrat Haqparast is a really good fighter, and I think he can put in the work on Jamie Mullarkey, just completely outstrike him here. I don't see Jamie Mullarkey winning this one. He definitely has the ability to, but it just seems like, I don't know, Jamie Mullarkey is just very disappointing at times, and I can't take him in this fight. Nasrat Haqparast is very good on the feet. He's a very good fighter. I think he wins this one, probably by decision. I don't see Nasrat finishing him. I mean, he beat Landon Quinones, beat John McDessie about a year before that, so Took a year off between the Quinones and McDessie fight, and then beat Quinones 2 months ago. Lost to Bobby Green by decision. Lost to Dan Hooker by decision. He's kind of in those fights a little bit. Again, he's still super young, 28 years of age. Going to be a 2-inch reach disadvantage. But Jamie Mullarkey, again, just extremely disappointing. I think Haqparast can land pretty well on Jamie Mullarkey throughout this fight. I don't think Jamie Mullarkey will be threatening in any way in this fight. So, Tapology picks Haqparast by decision. I think that's probably the most comfortable pick you can probably make in this fight. I don't think there's any finishing ability from either one of these guys against the other. Like, Haqparast is pretty durable, so I don't think he's getting finished. Nasrat Haqparast doesn't really have a great ability to finish other guys, so I think by decision is probably the way to go for this one. Up the card, we have Sumudaerji versus Allan Nascimento. This is actually a new fight. I went to film this card, and midway through it, they completely shuffled everything. I think they took a couple fights off this card. I can't remember what they had on it, but they added. I think they actually added this fight, but it's actually a pretty solid fight. Sumudaerji versus Allan Nascimento's last fight was against Matt Schnell, which was an absolute bloodbath. I believe that one was in like London as well. I picked Sumudaerji to beat Matt Schnell because I didn't think Matt Schnell had the durability to fight a guy like Sumudaerji, but Sumudaerji, I just guess, didn't have any finishing ability. So Allan Nascimento, very dangerous guy on the feet and on the ground. He has the power to beat you and the submission skills to beat you as well, especially against a guy in Sumudaerji who seemed a little bit chinny after his last fight. I know Matt Schnell's a very good fighter. If he was just durable at least a little bit, he would probably be winning some of these fights. However, Sumudaerji against Allan Nascimento, I think Allan Nascimento is one of the best prospects coming up. I know he's 32 years of age, but he's recently new. Like, he won in the Contender Series against Paiva, lost that one by split decision, beat Ayavito. Oh God, I'm not gonna try. Beat Tagir Ulanbekov by lost that one by split decision, but then beat Jake Hadley by decision, beat Carlos Hernandez by rear naked choke. I think he can beat Sumudaerji here. I'm glad he kind of took the time off after that last fight because he did take a lot of damage. However, I think Allan Nascimento is just going to look for the submission. If not, I think he can catch him on the feet and finish him there. So not expecting too many picks here. I must have just missed it on this card, honestly, because I feel like I didn't see it here. Maybe they rescheduled it or something. But I'm going to go Allan Nascimento by submission. 81% pick by Tapology. I think that's probably the right pick to make. Up the card with Anthony Smith versus Khalil Rountree. I'm going to go with Khalil Rountree. I think the leg kicks are going to really mess up Anthony Smith in this fight. I think Khalil Rountree's power as well is really going to mess up Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith, I'm not super behind him. I'm going to be completely honest. Like, Anthony Smith at this point in his career, I find disappoints me more than anything. Like, maybe not even disappointing. I think it's more of frustrating because I don't ever feel comfortable putting a pick in on him. Like, he lost to Magomed Ankalaev, got completely leg kicked, was kind of complaining about the odds in that fight, and then his leg kind of went and whatever and happened there, and then lost to Johnny Walker by decision. That was his all it's one thing. And then I picked Ryan Spann and he beat him by split decision. So I don't know where I'm at with Anthony Smith, but I'm going to trust Khalil Rountree to go out there, use his power, chew up the legs of Anthony Smith, kind of like how Ankalaev did, kind of like how Johnny Walker did, and really put quite a bit on Anthony Smith in this fight. Maybe get a finish. He does have the power to catch Anthony Smith, so maybe in the second or third round get the finish. But Anthony Smith is actually a pretty relatively durable guy. Tapology is saying a finish at 82% by KO. I don't know if I'll say by finish because Anthony Smith is decently durable. Like, the only reason why he got finished against Magomed Ankalaev was because his legs went out. And who did he get finished by? Glover was his last time. He lost by Rakic by decision and lost to Glover in the 5th round by finish there. So I'm going to actually say Khalil Rountree by decision. Weirdly enough, a lot of people are saying finish. However, Anthony Smith hasn't gotten finished in his last fight. Maybe Khalil Rountree chews up the legs of Anthony Smith. Maybe he'll get the finish that way. But like to a injury degree, like he's gonna get injured in that way, kind of like how Magomed Ankalaev did. But Anthony Smith doesn't really get finished too often. You got Glover and Magomed, 2 top 5 guys. You see that in Khalil Rountree. I guess that's kind of up to you. But I'm gonna go Khalil Rountree by decision, 30-27. Decision for this one. Up the card, we have Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. I'm going to go with Song Yadong. Was this one a short notice fight? I'm not sure. I'm not sure why it's the main event. I'm going to be completely honest. Song Yadong just feels like a very clear winner for this one. Chris Gutierrez, I guess, is coming off a win against Alatenge Lee, but lost to Pedro Munoz before then. So I don't remember if they had a different card or different fight headlining. I'm trying to remember in my head. I can't remember. There was like rumors of Weili Zhang, because this was supposed to be in Singapore. There's rumors of Weili Zhang or Song Yadong against someone else. So I guess those fights didn't happen, but I'm going to go Song Yadong. Very powerful hands on the feet. You saw what he was able to do against Ricky Simón. The takedown defense is actually pretty impressive. I guess it did actually look pretty impressive there. I was going to mention that again, but Corey Sandhagen actually took him down a couple times, but he was able to actually get back up. Made it really close with Corey Sandhagen, who's a very good fighter, a top 5 fighter. We'll see how he looks like against Umar Nurmagomedov, because that's a rumored fight to be happening. But Song Yadong is very strong, very powerful. I think he knocks out Chris Gutierrez, wins by TKO. I know he hasn't been finished. Has Chris Gutierrez ever been finished in his career? I might be wrong. No, he has never been TKO KO'd. This is a 5-round fight. I think there's a lot of opportunities for Song Yadong to catch Chris Gutierrez. I know Chris Gutierrez has some decent kicks in there and can mix it up a little bit on Song Yadong, but I think Song Yadong is just going to be too powerful. He's going to be stronger than him, so he's going to be able to control him wherever. Like, he's able to get the finish on Ricky Simón, who's actually a very talented wrestler, so that takes everything out of the way there. Was able to land pretty good on Corey Sandhagen at times as well. I'm going to have to go with Song Yadong by finish in the 3rd round. I just think Chris Gutierrez, 32 years of age, however, he hasn't looked as impressive as Song Yadong. I think Song Yadong's definitely a future top 5 guy. He's number 7 against number 16, according to Tapology. I don't know the actual UFC rankings, however, but I'm going to go with Song Yadong. I think he's going to be a lot better than Chris Gutierrez. I think he's going to catch him in the 3rd round. Maybe he catches him early. However, I think Chris Gutierrez is durable enough to endure some of the power early on in the fight, but I think as the fight goes on, I think it's going to really come at him. And I think Song Yadong really lands well on Chris Gutierrez. So I'm going to go with Song Yadong, 3rd round finish. Let me know what you guys think about it down below in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.